I've been told and told that I can bring down my gas and electric bill by simply filling in the gaps to keep out the outside air. I saw that poster over at the CAP Center, and I mean to tell you, I got the message. Well, I learned that by simply filling in the gaps in my windows and doors, I could save up to 20% on energy loss. Oh, don't tell me that an old dog can't learn new tricks. I figured that I'd try to fill in those gaps myself. Also, I kept hearing people talk about how easy it was to weather strip and to caulk. So I decided that I'd give it a try. Another thing that I decided that if I was going to do it, I'd learn to do it right. Why don't you come and learn to do it with me? Because I've got a good teacher. He's Don Lemonier, and he's the weatherization monitor and training specialist for the Oklahoma Department of Economic and Community Affairs, commonly called DECA. DECA has a whole series of public information, consumer education programs to help folks like us learn how to manage our dollars, and especially our energy dollars. And I'm so glad that they asked Don to teach this one, because he really knows what he's doing. And he knows how to help me and you do it too. Come on, let's go meet him.
Hi, I'm Don Lemonier. When I was asked to be the instructor, I said yes without even hesitating, because caulking and weather stripping is so easy to do that everybody can do something to make their house a little warmer in the wintertime. So what do you say we get started and take a look around our house and see where those air leaks are coming from? When I inspect doors for air leaks, the first thing that I do is I pick up and down on the door handle here and see if the hinges are loose. And the hinges are loose on this door, so we'll fix that later. Then I close the door, making sure it's latched, and I look around the crack that runs around the door here on the side and across the top, down the back side, and even across the bottom, and I look for light coming through that crack. If I can see light, then I know that I need to weather strip. There's another method that I use to test this seam right here for an air leak, and that is sometimes you don't see the light coming through. So if you'll hold a thread right here on this crack, you can see the draft blowing the thread. Another method that works real good is to go ahead and wet your finger and just run it along that crack there, and if you can feel an air leak, you know you need to weather strip. We treat windows the same way that we treat doors when we're checking them for air leaks. First thing we'll do is we'll rattle it. Listen to that one rattle. And we'll wet our finger or hold a thread along the crack here and look for that draft. We'll inspect our window panes to see if they're broken or if they're cracked. Now, let's go back out on the outside of the house here and see what we can find out there. What I'm looking for when I inspect the outside of the house is in the foundation area here. I'm looking at my vents to see if I can do something about closing them up during the wintertime. And I'm looking for obvious cracks along the foundation, such as we have right here. And I'm checking over my siding to see if any of it's pulled loose and if I need to nail it back down or if I have any obvious holes in it. I want to check around my windows to see if I have any cracks along the sides or along the bottom. And I'm interested in also checking the window panes to see if any of the putty's fallen off, and I need to take care of that. You can see that this vent or crawl space has already been closed, so that won't be any problem this winter. I'm also checking the house to look at the areas where the utilities come into the house, such as the water line that we have here, or a telephone line or electricity lines. These are installed by drilling holes in the wall, and we want to make sure that we plug those holes up. Okay, now that we've done our inspection, let's go back around to the front of the house and look at the materials that we'll be using to solve some of these problems. Weather stripping is used to seal cracks around moving parts of the house, such as windows and doors. And caulk is used to seal cracks in non-moving parts of the house, like foundations and cracks in the exterior siding. We have 4 common types of weather stripping here. We have felt strip, which is pretty inexpensive. It's 50 cents to $1 for enough to do 1 door, and it's easy to install, but unfortunately it doesn't last very long. Another type that we have is the sponge rubber tape, and this too is relatively inexpensive. It's $1 to $2 for enough to do a door, and it's easy to install, but it too doesn't stand up very well under a lot of use. And another type that we have is the spring metal weather stripping, and this is a little bit more expensive. It's $6 to $8 for enough to do a door. It's a little bit harder to install, and your door has got to be in pretty good shape before it'll work well. And the 4th type that we have is the aluminum vinyl. And this is too moderately priced. It's $5 to $6 for enough to do a door. It lasts fairly long, 5 to 10 years, and it's easy to install. And this is the kind that we're going to use today. Now let's take a look at the tools that we'll need for this job. We'll need some wire brads or small nails, a hammer, a common screwdriver and a Phillips screwdriver, a putty knife, a whisk broom or an old paintbrush, a pair of tin snips, some glue, a pair of pliers, a hacksaw, and a ladder for those hard-to-reach places. Now that we've gathered up our tools, let's go ahead and weather strip the front door. When we inspected this door, we found that our hinges were loose, so the first thing that we want to do is tighten the screws on the door hinge here, because no amount of weather stripping is going to keep the cold air out if the door doesn't hang square.
What if the screws keep turning round and won't tighten up?
That's a good question, because that happens a lot. As a matter of fact, here's one right here that's the hole's too big and it's stripped out. We'll have to fix that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to back out the screws that hold the hinge onto the door jamb here. And we're going to take something like some wooden kitchen matches or some steel wool or even a twig that you find laying around, and stuff that into the screw hole and then put the screw back in, and it should tighten up real nice for us. Pull that hinge back and take this little wooden match or a stick you find laying around. Steel wool works good too. And just put it in the hole there. Break off the excess. Now you'll find sometimes if you go ahead and put your screw back in and it still doesn't hold, take some Elmer's glue and put it on the screw. Put it back in there, and I guarantee that'll hold it. Then put our hinge back over the holes and get our screws started again. One thing I might mention is if you're ever painting your door, don't put any paint over this hardware, these hinges and these screws here, because you get paint on them and then the next person comes along to do some hinge tightening and they can't get their screwdriver to work on the screw. Okay, that tightens up a lot better now. Okay, those are on there good and tight now, and our door's nice and tight. So let's go ahead and we'll pull off any old weather stripping or any nails that might be in the way when we go to put on our new weather stripping. Take this little hook off here that holds our screen door spring on, and we've got some old weather stripping here. This is kind of why we don't want to use this type of weather stripping here. comes off too easy. Don't be afraid to wear gloves if you feel like it. Okay. The type of weather stripping that we're going to be installing on this door is the aluminum vinyl tubing, and we do that with the door closed and the latch secure. And it's important that we remember this. We want to install the top piece first. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the shortest piece out of our kit and hold it up to the door stop, which is where we're going to nail it on, and mark it so that we can cut it to length. And I just use a felt tip pen or a pencil to mark it. And then we cut it with a hacksaw. And tin snips work well too. Get my old hacksaw here. Okay, let's see how we did. Okay, that's going to fit nicely. Pull that door to again. And we'll pick up a couple of nails that come in the kit. And our hammer. Now here's the part that you want to remember. We'll just lay the weather stripping up on the doorstop here. And we want to be sure that the vinyl tube or bulb is actually touching on the door. And then we'll tack in some nails to hold it in place. We're going to finish putting in the nails in every hole.
Why is it so important to get that top piece on first?
Well, the reason that we want to install the top piece first is that we're going to measure the side pieces from the bottom of the top weather strip and not from the actual door stop itself. So we'll measure our next piece here, which we're ready for. We'll snug it up underneath the top weather stripping and then mark the bottom where we want to cut it. And then we'll cut it just as we did the top piece with our hacksaw. This is pretty easy to cut.